Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network. Always a blast to be joined by our friend and Texans insider, Stephanie Stradley. And in case you forgot, she's an OG Texans fan and a contributor to Cron.com. And Steph, we're going to take apart some of these moves piece by piece. But before we do, I got to ask, is this your favorite week of the offseason?
Actually, no. It's hard on a lot of people, just generally when people are kind of uncertain about their jobs, that's kind of difficult. There's a lot of, energy and camaraderie involved, and it's kind of hard to kind of go through this time. But like, to make a better team, you have to make a team, and it's like assembling the crew. Like I joke about this online sometime, but I think one of the best movies, not for everybody, is MacGruber. Because MacGruber is one of those typical, they're making fun of assembling the crew kind of movies where you have a problem, you assemble your crew. I don't know. Have you seen this movie?
I haven't seen. I know the sketch on Saturday Night Live. I haven't seen the actual movie.
It's kind of a crude movie, but it's really funny if you have that point of or that kind of frame of reference. But all I want to really say is, it's hard to assemble a crew. There's a lot of assemble the crew movies. Like, for example, every very Houston-oriented movie that documents or does drama of going to the moon. Going to the moon is where you bring all these badasses together, and then you work together as a team where you're being very honest with each other, and then you're taking your available resources, putting it toward an effort, and you go to the moon. Well, Houston has gone to the moon before, multiple times before we've gone to a Super Bowl. So right now, this is a precious time, because if you have a quarterback, any number of crews might work for you. Like, you are in the mix to go to the moon and back. So now this is the time of year where you're assembling your team. Now it's hard on people because some people want to stay. Some people are going to miss people that are gone, but you have an ambitious plan. Going to the Super Bowl is extremely ambitious.
I didn't think about it, but you're right. If you're in Houston, it's easier to go to the moon, apparently, and assemble that crew than it is to go to the Super Bowl.
Well, no, but it really is a very difficult thing to do. Like, think of all the richest people in the world. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Now, it's helpful to have those resources. You can't buy a Super Bowl. What you can do is assemble a crew that can take you there. And it's not an easy thing to do, because there's all sorts of people that are great coaches in one context, but they have to get to a different place to succeed. But I like the crew that's here. We're letting this crew try to be professionals to get the team that they want to do something really difficult. And they've done things already that I haven't seen before, but some of that comes from having very ambitious plans.
All right, well, let's get to the pieces they're trying to assemble here. And we're recording this 1 p.m. Tuesday. So if you're wondering, hey, why didn't we talk about this move or that one? This is why. So we're going to kind of get you up to date on where we are at this point on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 of the Texans starting offensive linemen in 2024 are gone. Let's start with Laken Tomlinson going to Washington for a third this year and a second next year. There's more to it, but those are the key pieces. The Texans dump a bunch of money now and going forward. The verdict, Steph, from fans is they loved it. Fans hated the drive-killing flags of Laken Tomlinson.
No, I don't. No. Like, some of those things being said as a shorthand are unfair. And once a guy's gone, I'm Team D'Amico on this. I thank Laken Tomlinson for all the things that he did, including playing for teams that were very difficult to play for, and sacrificing his health to do that at the price that he thought that was necessary for getting that money. But he likes to get paid. He values that. He deserves to get paid. Left tackles get paid. The Houston's going to have to make choices to pay people soon. And if you pay them early, you can get them locked in as part of your core. So they're going to be having to pay quarterback. They're going to have to pay defensive end. They're going to have to play corner. You're going to have to make difficult choices. And we don't have to disrespect people that had strengths and weaknesses that are going someplace else and can contribute in those places. Like, I don't need to do that because, frankly, the team doesn't need us to do that. Like, it doesn't.
I'm bringing it up because the question I wanted to ask you is, are the Texans better with this particular move? You're talking about Stroud and Stingley. That's a couple of years down the road. Are they better?
the deal is you have to make tough choices if you're a professional. You just do. The choices aren't going to be ideal. Like you can't just go shopping at Costco and get like all the premium goods. You have to make choices. You have resources. So when you have a quarterback that you believe in, that you want to pay, you need to, not just with Tunsil, you need to transition your offense so that that isn't the position on the team that you're spending the most beans on, or whatever money or cap or whatever. This is a process to have to transition your team into its next level. And they have already done very ambitious things. Like they've gone to the playoffs 2 years in a row with somebody who was straight out of school. We can't take that for granted because there's all sorts of teams who have drafted guys straight out of school and haven't had that kind of success. So my view is you have to look at kind of at the highest level. Now, of course, I don't know the full plan. Like if we're talking early March, the team in early March is not the team. So I try to think of it like Andre Johnson does. Do you think that Andre Johnson's freaking out? Yeah, well, I don't think so. I think the biggest thing is everyone recognizes that it is hard to replace a left tackle, and you better have a plan for it. Everybody on the team has to make that plan work. And you have people on that team whose job it is, like that's their sole job, to put those offensive linemen in good positions to succeed, whatever those 5 guys are, and in whatever way that you figure out how to do it. Because at a minimum, the offense needs to be average, but everybody on that side of the ball is not satisfied with average. And so this is a hard choice that they need to make for the future, for the guys that they know that they need to invest for in the future. And left tackle, like so far, I can get some of the skepticism that some people have because they've had a lot of success early at corner. They've had really actually a lot of success with a quarterback with maybe not like, he was working with young centers. Like that's a really hard thing to navigate. They've been obviously up and down about it, but it's hard to develop offensive linemen. You have to choose. You have to keep doing it. And you need to make investments. You have to have a good eye for drafting the position. And so like there's a lot of uncertainty going into the next season of what this team's going to look like when they fully put it together. But uncertainty is not good or bad. It's just uncertain. And you have to be okay with a certain amount of uncertainty, or I guess you could just run around like a fear baby, but I tend not to do that in March. And I don't think that Andre Johnson does.
Yeah. And I'll just give you my thought on the big plan and where they are, where they're going.
Yeah.
If the answer is left tackle is Blake Fisher, I'm concerned. I didn't think he was that good at right tackle the last few games. Yes, he played against the Chiefs twice and the Ravens.
I got the pass. 2025 is a new team with a new scheme, with another year of CJ Stroud getting time in. You're going to have completely different offense. So I get looking at last year's tape to go, I have concerns about these guys, but really putting Blake Fisher in the position that he was in with his level of experience was very ambitious. And
that was going to be my point. Just like, let me finish it off because you kind of jumped the gun on. I said, I was going to say, he played against the Chiefs twice and the Ravens. Yes, he was a rookie, so you have to factor that in. We saw Dwayne Brown turn it around quickly his second season. I was going to bring that up too, because I think that's important to remember. And you got to also think about this. He hasn't played left tackle since his freshman year at Notre Dame, and the Texans should be thinking Super Bowl. So if you're going to throw and hope that this guy in his second year is ready, I kind of think that could be a mistake. They could use a reliable vet. So we'll see what they do going forward. But I would prefer a reliable vet over Blake Fisher or somebody that they draft and trying to do a rookie that protects CJ Stroud when you think you're a Super Bowl team. That's my point.
I think my thing is it's just a question about whether you trust the professionals running things. It's not lost on them on how difficult it is to play different positions and how do you develop a team when you're having a combination of vets and young guys, because offensive line may be the most difficult position to play on the field. You have 100% of the snaps. Your specific play isn't sufficient enough. You have to play all unified, and it is definitely a challenge. But right now in March, I'm not going to say you have to do this or that, because when you have a quarterback that you expect to be elevating for the line. You can put any number of guys in there if you have a good scheme and you have the pieces together. And we are so early, it's hard to say. I don't really have any strong opinions about how they're going to do it, but I do know that I trust their level of urgency to get better. Like, I have no reason not to trust their level of urgency to get better. The combination of D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio, I really don't, like, when people are surprised, like, I can't believe they did this, or I can't, no, you got to understand they are trying to get to the moon. They have certain expectations of how fast people improve. So I don't care. And this is something that's an Astros thing. Like, I'm looking at what's behind you. They don't care if somebody is a rookie or an experienced player. They want real competition, and they expect the highest level competition. And they expect that people learn from practice to practice. And I know that's really ambitious, and they have shown it in the past, but like, that's the level of intensity that they have to get to the next level. And so, like, we can quibble about, well, this guy's here and he did this. And yeah, like, they're looking at everything. There's not like just, sometimes people think of plan A, B, C, like they're looking at plan infinity, because if you have an attractive situation when you have a quarterback and you have somebody that can move and pick different guys in the draft and can work with any team for any kind of trade and can improve the team in season, yeah, you're making your team in the off season, but I'm interested in how they're assembling the whole crew and not just, hey, this happened in 2024, because I have to tell you, I used to blow off the whole idea of well, each year is its own thing. I don't blow that off. Like, that's how these people operate. 2025 is completely new. Like, I've seen different ways that left tackles have been developed. I've seen different ways where quarterbacks can be elevating. I can see different ways where if all of the targets do the work that they're supposed to do, there should always be somebody open and all the balls will be caught, because CJ throws a very catchable ball. The sky is the limit for this team. And I'm just inviting everybody to just open their heart to the possibilities of what they can do with this attractive situation.
No, I think everybody's really excited. I think we're just trying to figure out where they are at now and where they are going forward. And that's what I'm trying to do.
You don't know.
What I do know is right now they don't have a left tackle, and who's the left tackle? And there's only so many options that the left tackle can be. It can be a veteran that they bring in still. It can be Blake Fisher, or it can be a draft pick. And I'm just, my point to this whole situation, just so, everybody out there that's watching, like, what do you believe in? Let me know. But what I believe in, and Steph can believe whatever she wants, and I got to see everything before it's all there. I'm just telling you, like, they have three choices. Okay. Blake Fisher, they have a veteran that they can bring in, or they have a guy that they can draft. If it's up to me, I would rather them go into the season with a veteran, just because where I am on Blake Fisher. Now, could Blake Fisher, like I said, I'm not judging Blake Fisher's whole life by the few games that he played, but this is a team that has Super Bowl caliber talent. CJ Stroud, he might only be in his third year, but because he's so good right now, and because once he gets expensive, you can't.
There's so much unknowns that you can't really go down any of these little paths. All I can say is, what do we know for sure? What we know for sure is we have seen some consistently amazing defensive play. So we know that they have a good eye for defense. We have seen mostly consistent special teams play, and we have an idea that they have a good sense of special teams play. For the offense, they know that the offense, not just the offensive line, the whole offense was just not good enough in a lot of different ways. And they've made a lot of changes. You have any number of opportunities, but it's a lot of it is, there's just no excuses. You're just going to have to figure it out. And there's an infinite number of combinations that could compete. Like, D'Amico Ryans is a guy who was called Cap before training camp was even over, right? He was captain and he was a leader right away and performed at a high level. That's what they expect of the rookies. They've seen it in some positions. Now, offensive line is a grown man position, difficult to develop, but it's not impossible. I don't know what this new staff's going to be able to do. I just know it's an ambitious plan. Not everybody can do it, but they've done lots of things that not everybody can do.
They also are going to go into this season with two new starting guards. They released Shaq Mason, trade Kenyon Green to the Eagles for safety CJ Gardner-Johnson. And I mean, Steph, getting literally anything of value for Kenyon Green is a win for me, because CJ had 6 interceptions last year, and a Pro Football Focus grade of 76. This move alone might make Caserio Executive of the Year, because I didn't think they were going to get anything for Kenyon Green.
I don't know about that. Like, I don't like a lot of the discussion of Kenyon because it reminds me of different players over time where if you get injured at the wrong time of the year, it can be really hard to get out of the doghouse with people. It can be real difficult for people to feel like they can depend on you. And sometimes a player never gets out of that. And sometimes a player does. And the hard thing on the offensive line play is at the college level, all of these guys are getting hurt to some degree. You know, it's hard to play that position and not get hurt. And you have the expectation to play 100% of the snaps. I'm not sure that they ever really had him in a good position to succeed, just the whole plan for him. And part of it, like, we don't have to point fingers of why, because I think some of that kind of conversation is unfair to the people. Like, you know, if you talk to them individually, they'll go, yeah, maybe that's fair, but maybe that's not fair. All I know is some players need a new place to go. And some teams are actually pretty good at developing players where they didn't meet their full potential in one place, but they did in another. And I'll give you an example of that. Brandon Brooks was a Houston Texan. He was a good Houston Texan. He probably didn't reach his highest potential with Houston. He went to the Eagles. They gave him different kind of help. He was a very solid guard for the Eagles in the future. The Eagles have taken different players for the Texans where maybe they just weren't having the right development for that guy and have made something from them. And that is actually a skill. The Texans have been able to do that themselves with players that, you know, they get on a 1 or 2 year contract and they look better as Texans than they did other places. I can't tell you the number of players who say how welcoming the environment of the Texans are for development, but it doesn't work for everyone. And sometimes people need a change of scenery, and it helps for them because everybody's journey is different.
Yeah, I'll say this about Brandon Brooks. I thought he was a pretty good guard with the Texans. I thought he was solid. I did not like just letting him walk there. Going forward, Gardner-Johnson actually made his NFL debut against the Texans. I feel like Gardner-Johnson is a steal for the Texans. He's the Eric Murray replacement for Nal Murray to the Jags for what's basically 2 years, $13 million. If you look at the fine print of that deal, the Texans also signed veteran guard Laken Tomlinson, who's probably comparable, I would say, to Shaq Mason as far as what he did this past year, but in a much cheaper deal, 1 year, $4.25 million. Among left guards with 300 pass blocking snaps, he gave up the 6th highest pressure rate and the most sacks. So there's some concern there. If he is the starting guard, that, you know, what is he going to be able to do as far as pass blocking is concerned? But that's kind of where you are with the guard situation. So, I mean, Steph, I don't know, what did you think about, you know, moving on from Shaq Mason, the addition of Laken Tomlinson?
I liked what Seth Payne was saying about Shaq Mason. Like, he was definitely a professional, but like, if you're looking for the guard position, he was not the traditional size that you would want for a guard in the year 2025. Offensive linemen can play pretty long in their career if they're really good. If you don't have like the typical size for this position, you can't afford to lose much athleticism or have injuries that hamper you any. And so I think that's just like, hey, we're giving you an opportunity to catch on someplace else, but we need a better starter. Because the thing is all of these positions we talk about, if somebody is not doing their part, that's not on the player. They're just trying their best. That's on the team for not having a better starter in that position. That's their obligation. Like when coach says that's on me, it's because they are responsible to make sure that they have starters in all the positions and that the backups are reloading, because it's in a long season, in an injury sport, you have to have pretty much a whole roster of guys who are potential starters, and that they prepare that way and that they're teamed that way. And that's hard to build. Like, it's hard to build a team where you're just reloading the positions, where you're not overpaying in a particular part of the team, where it's hard to overpay in those spots and win.
Yeah, Mason was a guy that I thought he was a little bit too maligned by Texans fans. He wasn't as bad, but for the price, I understood the move. I want to talk about some more Texans moves and just some thoughts on the Christian Kirk situation and that addition in a second. But before we roll on, just a reminder to tell us what you think about the Texans moves. Who should they sign? Who should they draft? Let me know in the YouTube comments. Rockets fans, Ben Dubose is joining me Thursday. Check that out. You can support us also and get updates on every show that drops by just subscribing on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up and listen in the car or while you're out and about with your favorite podcast app. Okay, Steph, are you happy to welcome back Sheldon Rankins? You were mentioning earlier the guys you might welcome back. It's 1 year, 5.25 base salary. Sounds like a great deal.
The Texans have demonstrated that they can work with any number of different guys on the defensive side of the ball and put them in positions that are good. They're really looking for professionals, people that they don't have to babysit. That kind of professional is easy to work with. Like, you just want people that are easy to work with, that do their job, and and that help each other. Like all the like rah-rah team stuff. Like it's real. It's real. Like, trying to do what they're trying to do is very hard. And if you have legit professionals at every position, it makes it easier. Like it really is like hitting the easy button if you can depend on pretty much every choice you have on the team.
Next guy we got to talk about, and maybe the most important addition to the offense, really, Christian Kirk, adding him for the 7th round pick. Before I get your reaction on this move, Steph, what I want to do is listen back to Jags insider James Johnson, who was on with me the other day, who was breaking it all down for us from their angle. I'm going to let you hear what James had to say about Christian Kirk.
You guys are getting the total package, man. It's just, after the injury, you have to wonder, like, does he come back full speed? I know it was an upper body injury, not like pertaining to his legs or anything, but does he come back full speed? Does he look like Christian Kirk of old? And if he does, this is one that could turn out very well for the Texans and not so much for the Jaguars.
What do you see his weaknesses are? I understand maybe not the best hands in the world. Is that something that you would consider a weakness?
The drops did concern me. Now it was one where, I think our fan base was a little too harsh on him, where he dropped one, albeit, it was in, a pivotal moment of the season. But yeah, definitely the hands were concerning. And I think a lot of people here in Jacksonville, they love Christian Kirk. And, a lot of the reaction when he left was, for the most part, positive, that we'll miss him. But I think at the same time, the Jaguars fans, especially, coming from his position, we're ready to stop being around the top of the league and drop passes. So that, that could be a key reason why he's no longer here for sure.
I noticed his yards per game dropped down to 47.4 yards this past year after being over 65 his first couple of years in Jacksonville. Is there anything that accounts for that? What happened there?
Yeah, admittedly, I think, Trevor struggled at times in the beginning of the season. So that didn't help. I never have been a fan, especially under Doug Peterson and Press Taylor, never was a fan of the offensive line. Like, I don't think our offensive line has been that great. And I do think, like, a lot of it was attributed to a slow start from the offense, and the offense trying to, like, find themselves and trying to come off of what was a losing streak the previous year. And they really were struggling with that and scripting early in games and getting going early in games. And I think, like, that hurt Kirk's stats a lot.
Some good stuff there from Touchdown Jaguars host James Johnson. Make sure to watch our full conversation if you didn't catch it. But Steph, getting Christian Kirk for the 7th round pick looks like a no-lose move by Caserio. Reminds everybody of the Joe Mixon deal last year. This is a no-lose, especially if he, Caserio can drop that salary price on a renegotiation, and Christian Kirk can stay healthy, which is really the only thing that you see as a downfall with Christian. He's been hurt the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with him is he is a professional. And if you watch how wide receivers work together, they'll all talk about how much they influence each other, because each of them have like things that they excel at, things that they want to get better at. Every time you bring a vet wide receiver in, you can see an effect on the quarterback, because each guy is a little different, and then you see it on younger players. But like, he's not like the old head, but he kind of acts like it, in that he's just really he's serious about the work, and he's a professional. That's always nice to kind of bring that into the mix. Now they have like 5 million wide receivers, and of course, there's the point of view that if you have a lot of guys doing a competition, that you don't really have a guy. But I think that if this scheme is done the way it's supposed to be done, there's always going to be an open guy. And you do need to have a situation where the whole team needs to be better about less drops. Drops were a problem last year, especially when your quarterback's under duress. you can't waste a drop. Like these are professionals. There's a really high standard for professional wide receivers, and every bit of it counts. But this particular team, just seeing, what scheme we think that they're going to be doing, like it needs to be route runners that know where they're supposed to be and have good chemistry with the quarterback.
Yeah, and the guys I think that they really wanted to get the ball
Smart.
to most, like Nico, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, they weren't going to drop passes. Unfortunately, as everybody knows, the injuries to Tank and Stephon Diggs meant guys that you didn't want to catch the ball were trying to catch the ball.
And to be fair to those guys, by the end of the season, we started off the season with the 5-headed monster, but like, of course, injuries were getting players playing like their first big minutes they've ever played. By the end of the season, a lot of those guys were playing through some stuff that you're not making great film when you're playing through stuff, but you didn't really have a plan C. They just need to make sure that they're at a higher level one more year in, because you just can't, you have to be able to depend on the entire roster of wide receivers. We are getting into a very long season, and it's projected to be 18 games at some point. And, people will say, well, preseason is shorter now, but these are the real games. How do you get guys to get through the entire season and then be fresh enough for the playoffs? And really, a lot of what you were seeing last year looked like they were just trying to maintain, like they were doing as much as they could without exposing people to too many injuries, because, in some positions, the plan Cs were not great.
Yeah. And, it also takes luck to make a Super Bowl run and to do stuff. And the Texans just haven't had a lot of luck with injuries. Let's see if that changes again. That's why bringing in somebody like Christian Kirk with an injury history, you go, well, that's a little concern, but you just,
although you said an injury history, like some injuries tend to be chronic, like, hamstrings can be difficult. Some guys do just take bigger licks, and, he might be one of those people, but if you play long enough, it's an injury sport. So it's really hard to go, okay, we're not going to get this guy. Or if they have a perfect injury history and they're in a prime part of their career, you're not even getting a chance to get them because they're staying with their team.
Yeah. And sometimes you get value because a guy was injured and that was just happenstance or whatever.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think that's another reason why I think Christian Kirk was available for what he was available for, was because he's had injuries the last couple of years. And only one of those, which was a couple of years ago, was soft tissue injury, whereas the collarbone, you just figure that's a one-time thing. The Texans add a couple more wide receivers between CJ, Gardner-Johnson, and new wide receiver Justin Watson. The Texans have added 4 Super Bowl rings to their locker room. I would call Justin Watson maybe a Kevin Walter type blocker, but I'm not even 100% sure he's got an automatic roster spot, Steph. He feels like this is competition. You talked about it earlier, competition with Xavier Hutchinson. This is the guy that would be his direct competition.
I think it's just they're all competing to make the team and make good tape, so that even if they don't make it here, they can make it someplace else. Because there's the league has a lot of former Texans all over it, where, you just can't keep everyone. But if you come into the league with good habits travel. To me, when I watch training camp, I'm looking at like who's competing, but who's surviving camp, because it is hard to survive camp when you're trying to make a team. And that sometimes when you see the competition, you'll see guys elevate, like where you're like, this guy's faster than I thought. Like, it's really hard to kind of stand out in camp if you're at the end of the roster, but sometimes you do. And sometimes, the jump from year 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, like, these guys are working in the off season. Like, they know what their weaknesses are. The people that stay in the league for a long time are the guys that go, I know what I'm good at. I'm going to use the off season to get better at some of my weaknesses, and doing it in a smart way, because sometimes you can kind of overdo also. Like, it's really hard to dial that in.
The Texans add 2 special teams players. They bring in cornerback Tremont Smith. He returns back to the Texans, and they add Braxton Berrios, who's he looks like this year's version of Steven Sims, but hopefully with a little bit more juice than Steven Sims did have. But is that the do you see?
The sad part about Steven Sims to me is that he actually had some really good camps, and he really did compete hard in practice, and just had some unfortunate moments that just didn't work out. But he was a good guy to have on your team, and you're just trying to keep adding pieces and parts that were going to make the whole team better. We're like, we are the first part of MacGruber. I'm just saying, everybody out there who likes like kind of stupid comedies, 2025 might be MacGruber year, where you're assembling your team and then you finally have to get the right team before you're successful at the end. Or if that's not your thing, go find an astronaut movie where you have all these personalities come together and it's a new season and you have people that you know and you have the new people. We're going to the moon, guys. And our job as fans is not necessarily to judge and march. It's for us to figure out ways that we can have more fun together. Like fun, like actual fun. Our job is fun. Now, like right now we're educational, maybe we're entertaining. I challenge all of you listening, what can you do to make it more fun for Texans in your particular way? Like if you work at a restaurant, make some good food. If you're a realtor, make sure that these people are welcome and have good houses. Like that is, you specifically, remember Love You Bleav. And Love You Bleav is just about, we are welcoming these people into our communities as our neighbors, and we want them to succeed, and we're hoping to have fun with them and make all the processes fun on the way. Because I can tell you, over many years of the team, this time of year, draft time of year, training camp, and when the season starts, that feeling of welcome puts wind in people's sails. I'm just going to say that. So if you listen to the players, they talk about that. And really, we can say, oh, well, this person is weak this way. Well, what about us as a fan base? I don't want to point fingers to this, but I think that we can have more fun and more energy this year, where NRG Stadium can be what we've always seen it's possible to be at noon. Like it's hard to get 70,000 people over at NRG Stadium by noon. Like really, the biggest weakness of the team right now is a weakness that every fan base has right now, which is digital tickets with Ticketmaster make it easier to sell tickets to other fans, and it makes it harder to hold home field advantage. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just how things are. Well, how can we, as a community, get the 70,000 football loving Jessies in the stadium to support this team? Because all the studies say, if we're going to look at analytics, all the studies say that home field advantage matters. And these are our neighbors, and we want to succeed together. And we are Texans. I know that this sounds kind of facetious, but I'm talking to all of you out there. We love football in a certain way. It's more fun when the whole community loves football in a certain way. And we don't have a distance between that player needs to do better or that fan needs. No, like all of us together, we don't need to point fingers or talk about the past so much, other than contextualizing that I've seen NRG Stadium at its best. I don't think that we're quite back from even pre-COVID, and I don't think a lot of teams are. We can point, oh, well, the team should do this. Well, what about us? Like, we're part of our history. We're writing the script. Arian Foster was right.
Couple last thoughts before we go. The Texans re-signed Mario Edwards and MJ Stewart, so they're back. They also signed a backup defensive end in Darrell Taylor, good edge rushing depth. But let's move on to Nick Caley, because we haven't spoken since he was hired. What's your early impression of him as the new OC?
I'm curious because, usually I want to know, like, what is this guy's scheme? Like, what is it going to be? They had a lot of different directions that they could go. And I think what they recognized was they have a lot of impressive football minds and developers in the building. Certain things just weren't done. Like certain things were just not enough. And if you've ever worked with somebody where you're like, this guy is a really impressive guy, if I ever have the chance to bring this guy into the team that I'm working with to do his thing, I can see the potential in this guy. And what's interesting for me, like, scheme stuff aside, like, I don't know what it's going to be other than it looks like they're trying to keep the best of what they've had, but bring it into something more modern and more easily taught. Because really, at this stage, you need to be able to succeed with a lot of different talent levels. And the best coaches can get great efforts from people that most people wouldn't go, oh, well, this guy's a great player. Like, it's just a reload. Like, they make it easy to reload because it's a long season. The thing that I like about him the most, and this goes back to the Andre Johnson thing, I went to Canton to watch him being inducted to the Hall of Fame. I actually put extra time on my trip because I'd never been to Canton. And what's interesting about it to me is the people there love football in that very special way that demented people do. Like, I guess you could say it all, but they're very committed to football in a way that is enjoyable. It's enjoyable to hang out with people that like football that much, as long as, it's well sorted. Like the people that you meet that go, all that. He is from Canton. He was born in Canton. He's a John Carroll guy. It's pretty clear that he understands some of the lessons of New England, which sometimes takes a while for New England guys to realize, which is it's the thing that Kubiak said. It's the thing that D'Amico says now, which is you got to let them know you care before they're going to care what you know. It's just a basic teaching thing. It's obvious that he cares and he wants to put people in the best positions for them to succeed. Now, whether you translate that from this is my idea to reality, offense is hard, but they've had a lot of really impressive teachers in the building and have created an attractive place to do football. Like these are people serious about football. It's fun. Like they don't want everybody to have the same personality, but they do want people to be professionals in their own way and have something that they bring to the table. I don't know what he's going to be, but what I do know is a lot of people that I think are bright people have great things to say about him and are impressed with him as a teacher. And really that's what coaching is. It's teaching.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff coming out about him. Can't wait to see what he can do. She's at Steph Stradley on X. Anything else you want to plug, Steph, before we get going?
Hit me up on X or Blue Sky or YouTube. Like, I am really trying to plan my 2025. Like, what is the best use of my resources to support this team? Because I want to see it this year. I want our ride collectively to be as enjoyable as it can be. Sometimes people will go, I miss this era and I miss this era. It's like, why can't we make that now? I know we get, and I'm person one with this. Like, I'm very much into the weeds of all of the details of who these guys are. And what I've found in recent years is this is the time of year to judge less and really see people beyond what their statistics say. See them as human beings who may not say things the way that you prefer or maybe you do vibe with them, but get to know them as your neighbors, because it's much more fun to root for a team when you know more about the guy behind the helmet. And what I'm very glad about is we have so many more opportunities for that now than we've ever had. Like when I first started writing for Cron 2006, there weren't that many outlets. And now that there's a lot of different ways that you can consume your information. And all I can say is try to be fair, and try to be welcoming. Recognize that people's moms are listening to you. People's moms are hearing how you're talking about their son and his effort and all that kind of stuff and his sacrifice. And a lot of times they can't talk about what different people are going through. But all I can say is there's enough mess in the world without us making sports less than uplifting. And I want all of our Houston sports to be uplifting. I appreciate all the people that really try to do that. And it's a challenge for us every day because we get frustrated that something's not going fast enough. I want us to enjoy the ride. And me personally, if you have suggestions on how I can make things more fun for the most people and most uplifting, hit me up. I would like to know. I'd like to contribute to that. Like, everybody's busy doing their own, mess, but I'd like things to be their best. Like, I would like this to be the best sports year ever, 2025, because who doesn't like being uplifted? We don't have to be afraid of things that happened in the past. The football people are footballing. We can observe it. We'll see them baking this cake or making the rocket ship or assembling the crew. But I'm excited to see it because we got a quarterback. Got a quarterback.
Yeah, that's a biggie. Yeah, and this show brought to you by Will Forte and Buzz Aldrin, I would say, is the two. That's a takeaway. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate the time, Steph.
I am so glad that you had me on. It's been too long since we've seen each other, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.